Neil has really established himself as somebody who we all have gotten to know over many years. And I like to go back a little bit and let those in attendance here get a little sense of your history.
Okay.
And we know that there's a New Mexico connection, and your family now lives in Albuquerque, but for you, it started in a very small town called Ruidoso.
Ruidoso, yeah,
Ruidoso.
Ruidoso. It's a ski resort town, and about 3.5 hours southwest of Albuquerque. Small town. In the summer, horse racing. The All-American Futurity is there, quarter horse racing. And in the wintertime, there was a ski resort called Sierra Blanca, which was then changed to Ski Apache, because it was on the Apache tribe land. And so lots of tourism in this small little town.
I actually went on Google Maps to see some pictures. It's very beautiful. There's a river that runs through it,
I was incredibly blessed growing up because it's a very small, idyllic, pine tree laden town with one elementary school, one middle school, one high school. You didn't have to worry about the things that you worry about in New York.
Population of 5,000?
Something like 5,000. Everyone knew each other. My parents were attorneys, small town, so they would just handle whatever came. It was I remember spending a lot of time alone or with my older brother, Brian, who's 3 years older, just running free, which is so weird because as a parent, we have twin kids who are 4, a boy and a girl, but in a city, you're really having to be aware of their comings and goings, especially at 4.
I hope so.
Go have fun on the subway, kids.
That's called good parenting.
But over in Ruidoso, my most impressive memories were those of fishing by myself in a river, or pulling up my jeans and wading through water, or feeding ducks, or running as fast as I could through a forest because I knew how to get 4 miles through a forest, Hunger Games style, just by running.
And those skills have come in very handy in New York City.
Yes, I run very fast now through the
Wading
forest.
through Central Park.
Yeah, exactly.
But for you, when your grandparents were in Albuquerque, so a big day was getting in the car, driving 3 hours, and going to see your grandparents.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my family was in Albuquerque. That's where my father was born and raised and grew up. So we were all New Mexican. My mom Sheila's from Portales, New Mexico. So no one was going to drive to Portales. But Albuquerque was awesome.
So in terms of the first inclination that you would explore the creative side of Neil Patrick Harris, 8 years old, your piano teacher was Jane Dio. Dio. You made a big mistake because you introduced me to your mother last week, and she and I have been emailing.
Oh, man. This is going to get
I got more
freaky.
From Mrs. Harris. Anyway, Jane was your teacher, but your mother said that you didn't love practicing.
Well, I was a young kid, and I had much more important things to do, like play with G.I. Joes in the backyard. Yeah, Jane Dio was this extraordinary woman that ran a bookshop called the Aspen Tree, and she was just this spitfire, middle-aged woman that did kind of everything. She played the organ at the Episcopal Church where we went, and she ran this bookshop, and she hired me to work at the bookshop at 8, 9 years old, which was extraordinary because to be treated like a person at that age and not just relegated to kids stuff was great. And I got to run the register, and I got to do inventory on books and organize them, and I think that really affected my mind and the way I process information. Bookshops are filled with structure and filled with different arenas and factions. And she also was a piano teacher on the side if she didn't have enough going on. So yeah, I learned to play the piano there. And in a small New Mexico town, the arts are limited to pottery and paintings and bolo ties. And those wooden howling coyotes. And but not much about performing arts. It was all about football and baseball and soccer, which was cool. I loved soccer. But it was nice to have someone like Jane be able to be so musically influential.
Your mother said, which I thought was a great observation, that you weren't so big on practicing, as I mentioned, but when it came time for a recital, you were on. That some people choke under pressure. She saw in you immediately that when the lights came on and you were going to do a recital, you were 100% there.
Yeah, I value that. I think I appreciate the uniqueness of that idea, and yet as a parent, I feel like that's human nature a little bit, right? Like that's the worst feeling. It's not so bad to fail at your piano concerto if you're in front of your teacher, but it was really shitty if it's in front of 75 parents who then, are passing negative energy or judgment at you. So even at that early age, I knew when it was game time, you had to represent.
Very much so. The case today, 8th grade, a show called Way Out West.
Oh my God. It wasn't called The Way Out West. It was called How the West Was Really Won.
Oh, okay.
And that's how the West was really won. Go west, young man, go west. That's where the living is best. We'll make our fortunes and invest in the West. Go, man, go west, young man.
Now you have to understand that Neil.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
This is 8th grade, and this man
Seared into my skull.
This man wrote and directed and starred in the show in 8th grade.
I didn't write it, but I directed and I acted in it.
Sheila's giving me bad information.
She's giving you half truths, She's a pill popper.
Right.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
In Yiddish, we would call her a Bubameister.
She's a Bubameister.
Right.
We love her.
Right.
No, but these kind of shows were so exciting because they would be performed in the high school gymnasium, and everyone would sit in the bleachers. And so, and Churchill Cook was the name of our choir director for the elementary and middle school, and he liked the fact that I was interested in harmony and systems, and so he let me kind of take that on. So I got to teach people harmonies, thirds and fifths, and have the tall people stand in the back, make it look good. And then I was the old, what was he, like a prospector. I was an old prospector, and I had a corncob pipe at 8. When I was 8th grade, I get confused too. And listen to this, Jonathan. I came up with this great idea. If you put baby powder in said corncob pipe, and then if you exhale instead of inhaling, pa, 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 looks like I'm smoking a damn pipe. So I thought
8th grade.
I thought it was super cool, and as you can see, I wasn't.
But Sheila went on to say that there was a defining moment when she was leaving one of the shows because I guess one of her neighbors, one of her friends, walked up to her in the parking lot and said, "You realize that Neil has incredible talent." And as Sheila said to me, her next line was, "I don't know what to do about that." And then this woman said to her, there is a summer camp in New Mexico State College, and in a sense, that's where you started to really pursue.
Yeah, the idea came from my choir director, Churchill Cook, and a band director who was Mr. Canella, Churchill Cook, and I'll come up with it. And they thought I should go to a performing arts high school when I was entering from the 8th grade into the 9th grade. Danny Flores, thanks. And Danny Flores was amazing. Amazing. Small town, Ruidoso, New Mexico. This guy did the high school marching band. And it was unbelievable because he did all of the formations in the high school at the halftime show. But Ruidoso is a super tiny podunk town. And he would do the coolest. He'd do all these great formations that would turn and turn back, and then they'd all go in chaos mode, and they'd just be running around, and they'd freeze. And then they'd keep going, and then they'd right back in formation. It was like a magic trick to me. I loved the notion that music could be artistic on such a large scale. So they thought I should go to a performing arts high school, but that seemed really, that seemed like pulling me out of my work, like my family environment, like a military school, but with jazz hands.
So you just,
So I didn't want to do that. And then the idea arose that there was a week-long drama camp at New Mexico State, which was essentially for high school kids to be interested in going to New Mexico State for their college education. And I was on the youngest end of it. Hi, thanks for coming. He's so funny. So I was the youngest, talking about drama camp, I went for a week.
he'll catch you up a little bit.
We'll catch you up in a second.
Right. We haven't gotten to Hedwig yet.
Yeah. I ended up going to this drama camp for a week, and it was super fun. It was the furthest I'd ever been from home, away from my parents, and you were in the dorm, and there was freeze tag, and there were all these acting lessons and things. Mark Medoff was in charge of the camp. Mark's a prolific playwright. He wrote Children of a Lesser God, won the Tony for it, became a movie, and he was the playwright in residence there. Still is, I believe. And he had written this movie called Clara's Heart, based on a Joseph Olsham novel, and it was a big Warner Brothers movie. I knew nothing about it, obviously. I'm not in the business, and we were in tiny New Mexico. And for random reasons, I ended up being in a class that he was teaching. Super random reasons. We were lined up against a wall, and people were just chosen by number to go to different teachers for cold reading audition class. And I happened to be in Mark Medoff's class. And he thought that I had gumption. It's a New Mexico word. And I can't believe I just said gumption. And I ended up doing this cold reading sort of audition with him, and he thought I'd be good. There was a part in the movie that was opposite Whoopi Goldberg, of this very waspy kid in Baltimore whose parents were getting divorced. And so the camp ended. He said nothing to me about it. At the last day of the camp, he talked to my parents and said, introduced himself and said that we had this class together and that he had written this movie and would I want to audition for this major motion picture. Now, my parents were very wary of this as an idea.
I can understand that.
Well, they didn't drink the Kool-Aid straight away, because about a year before, a dude came through Ruidoso from Star Search.
Wasn't Ed McMahon himself?
No, it was a producer of Star Search came through Ruidoso and said, we want people to audition and sing a song or what have you, and there's awards and prizes, and if you win, then you advance to the regional finals of Star Search, and you could be on Star Search. And so I had a leather jacket with the things, the Western things. What are they called?
Frills.
Fringe?
Frills.
Nice.
Frills.
And
You can tell I've been in New York too long.
yeah. And I sang Wild Montana Skies by John Denver with my friend Amber Perry, who played the xylophone. And I had a keyboard. And I sang in the wild Montana skies. And there were you didn't get tickets. You didn't get any free tickets for your family. They were like $50 a piece. And so we were very excited that the Star Search was happening, and all the contestants were there. And it was a small house, only like 75 people. We didn't care. We wanted to be on Star Search. And so we all performed, and randomly, we all won something. Amber Perry and I won a nice first place prize. We were going to go on. All said and done, a week and a half later, we're trying to follow up on it. Dude, totally fraudulent, not with Star Search at all. Had taken everyone's $50 for the Star Search and left. Left crying.
Amber Perry was
Amber
probably
Perry.
very upset.
Yeah. And so that was our last experience with Hollywood. So now Mark Medoff at this camp is saying, hey, I wrote this
he was
movie,
a little more
and
legit.
your kids can be a star, and we're going to put him in an audition. So they said, yeah, send us a script, tough guy, and we'll believe it when we see it. And then sure enough, and they didn't tell me that they had had this conversation, and sure enough, a Federal Express package arrives to Ruidoso, New Mexico, and in it is a script from Warner Brothers Television that says, Warner Brothers Feature Films, that says, Clara's Heart, a movie but written by Mark Medoff, and it was true. And so they had to sit me down in their office. I remember it very vividly, and they told me, they recounted the story and said, did you want to audition for a movie for Hollywood? So I ended up auditioning for the movie, not getting it. They cast another kid in that movie, and it was a different director, and then they ended up replacing the director, and in turn replacing the actor who played the child, and cast myself. So that was my first big get.
And you were nominated for a Golden Globe.
I was nominated for a Golden Globe for it, of all things. Yeah, it was a super strange entry into the business.
Your film credits go on to Harold and Kumar and
It was Clara's Heart, and then Harold and Kumar.
Well, it's Clara's Heart, Harold and Kumar, and the Smurfs.
And the Smurfs. One
Yep.
and two.
Yep.
Represent.
And then a little more serious, Gone Girl.
Gone Girl, yeah, that was the
Last
last big
year.
thing I did.
Yep.
That was unbelievable. If you ever get the chance to work with David Fincher, dude, he's unbelievable.
Is he looking for like Upper East Siders for his next movie?
Here's hoping. No, the business is interesting, and one of the reasons I love living in New York is because it's not so business-centric, business being Hollywood, because that entertainment industry is very bizarre. Things that are supposed to be successful aren't. Things that are not at all supposed to be important become wildly important, and both of those extremes create emotional chaos, right? Because if everyone hopes that the thing that they got, that the big giant job that they get doesn't land, then they're gutted. And the people that do this little independent Blair Witch movie for $5,000 or something suddenly becomes a $100 million movie, then they're suddenly thrust into this world that they're not prepared for, and that it spins them around. Like, it's a very weird business.
But
in many ways, right? So when you get to work with a David Fincher in something, and he's really professional, and the work is fun, and you feel like you're working, and you feel like it's the end game of a lot of work that you've done before, those are the moments that I think are the most rewarding.
Well, pre-David Fincher, obviously you can't talk about your career without the years from 88, 89 to 93, which were
Doogie Howser, MD.
Doogie Howser, MD.
Yeah, yep. The original blogger.
I can't read, speaking of original bloggers, there was a thing at the end of the show where he was blogging and typing. You have to read Neil's book because there are some that I can't retell in a mixed audience like this that are really funny, that never made it on air.
How mixed is this audience? Is it filled with nuns and priests?
I'm the CEO of a public company. I can't say some of the things that you wrote.
Yeah, we took a lot of liberty with some of the stuff in the book.
Yeah, they're pretty funny. Tell us about those years. You were young, you were living in LA, you were just talking about the transition to the life of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, well, I had done Clara's Heart, and that was random, and it didn't come out for a year after that, and so I just went back to Ruidoso and worked at a Schlotzsky's sandwich shop. At 14, which seems like it's not allowed. But apparently I did, and got paychecks. And then I would get this other random job here and then, and we never really wanted to do a television show, we being the family unit that decided things, not just myself. And mainly because my parents had a law practice, and we lived in New Mexico. And the idea of doing a television show seemed very uprooting and weird.
Did everybody move to LA so you could
Well, yeah, so my parents loved, their favorite shows were Hill Street Blues and LA Law as lawyers, both done by Stephen Bochco. And so we jokingly said to my agent at the time, Bo Shute, a magnificent woman, the only show we would ever do would be a Stephen Bochco show. Because then it would be worth it. And wouldn't you know, cut to a year later or something, Stephen Bochco wants to do a half-hour single camera, what do they call it, dramedy, about a genius kid who's a doctor in medical school, no, an actual doctor, graduated at Princeton at 12 or something. And so I auditioned for it and ended up getting that job, and that fully uprooted us in a lot of very random ways. And it was great work and super fun. I have to say, we only did 97 episodes of that. It was 4 seasons.
4 seasons?
Yeah, but in syndication it was 108. It doesn't stop. And I'm just very appreciative and grateful of that chapter. The name sucks. Not sucks, but that's the sort of odd albatross. Hi, how are you? Hey, look at you, you're selling raffle tickets?
Those are questions from the audience.
Questions, right. Because I'll buy 5.
This is a very democratic process.
But I know in the early 90s, a lot of television was multi-camera, sort of lowest common denominator, broad comedy led by producers who were not so friendly or professional. And so to have Stephen Bochco be your champion and have his finger in every episode in its writing meant that the quality level was just higher. It required a lot more work on my end of memorization and sort of skill retention, but I played the drums. No, that's suturing, actually what I was thinking about. And so I loved it. I got to learn how actors worked and how directors directed with a camera and how to spit out dialogue really fast in only a few takes because you had to keep on going. It was factory work, but a really amazing Willy Wonka.
Did you like living in LA?
Yeah, for sure. I love LA, it's great.
Mm-hmm. But you were young at this point. You were still
Yeah, I was a teenager.
in
so
your
I had
formative years.
I had the work to do, but also public high school back in Albuquerque that I had to attend. So I would finish the first the season of the show and then hop right back into the second semester of high school and kind of cycle through that.
Well, while we're talking about TV, obviously we can fast forward a bit to 2005 and How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah. That was so fun.
You're a little older now. You're playing a very different role.
Yeah.
Just saying. How was that transition?
That was fun. It was so weird because that transition
It had to
really
be fun.
came from the Harold and Kumar stuff.
Right.
Because I had done TV, I'd done Doogie Howser, and that had sort of there was a weird television stigma at that time in the 90s. If you declared television as your major, then you didn't get to be in movies, and vice versa. If you were a movie star, you didn't do TV shows.
Right.
Much different landscape, wonderfully so now, where you can just pass from one to the other. But I was that and a kid and trying to figure out who I was professionally, who I was sexually, who I was personally, and all of that was kind of happening at the same time. So I sort of took a break. I wish I'd have worked more, but I took a break from that and did theater for a while to just be able to explore physicality a little bit. One of the drawbacks of doing 100 episodes of a single camera television show is that you have I don't know if this is going to land. You have something called a page count. So every 22 pages, 24 pages in an episode, and you have to break that down by days because you can only film one episode in 5 days, and they budget it for that. So you have 5.5 pages that you have to get that day. And if you don't, you're behind, and you have to then make up more the following day. And so you're constantly having to kind of regurgitate stuff. But through that, all you ended up doing is when they would block the scene, is I'd walk in with a clipboard and stand next to the bed, and I'd talk to the patient, and then they could do the wide shot of the two of us, and then go in for coverage. And coverage would be over my shoulder to the patient and close-up of the patient, and then over the patient's shoulder to me and close-up of me. And through that, that was kind of everything. Vinny and I would hang out in my bedroom. And so Vinny would come in through the window, and we'd stop, and we'd stand there, and then they'd go coverage, and it would be over my shoulder to Vinny, and then close-up of Vinny, and over Vinny's shoulder to me, because you had to get all of the shots that they needed to edit. The drawback of that is that you ended up just learning how to stand there every scene. And that was important to do, because if you went like this while you were doing the scene because you're nervous, the camera operator hated you because he's trying to keep you in the shot the whole time. So I got really good at standing still and being hyper aware of this much of me. And the rest of me at 17, 16 years old, I didn't know what to do with it. Like I didn't know my posture, I didn't know. Like I didn't know what to do, so I went to the theater, because at theater you're required to be more of a person, where you're full body and they can choose to watch you. There's no editing involved, and so from the theater I went to New York and did theater, and from that I got a call about this movie called Harold and Kumar, because these dudes liked Doogie Howser and thought it was a funny conceit that Neil Patrick Harris was tripping on ecstasy. And it's like super horny for big-titted strippers.
Right.
And so...
Well, you were able to really channel that as Barney.
Well, right. So from that,
Yeah.
I did that for 2 days. It turned into a thing.
A little different than...
And then then the people who created Barney, Carter Bass, Craig Thomas, amazing guys, had written this show, and I go into audition. The part's written for Jack Black. The part's written for like... stocky, cigar-smoking, red meat-loving, scotch-drinking jackass, right? And I don't look like that.
Really?
So I just went in knowing I wasn't going to get the audition and didn't really care. And they liked the Harold and Kumar thing. They thought that there was good tangential interest. And so I ended up getting that gig, which turned out to be just the most fun job one could possibly have in the history of ever.
I can imagine, and playing somebody that is very different from Neil Patrick Harris in real life probably gave you a lot of freedom.
Yeah, I hump dudes.
Not on the show.
No. No.
No.
Not
I
on
was
the
talking
show.
about your character on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
He humps strange.
Right. Right. Lots of different women.
Women.
Yeah. That's the
Barney
opposite,
calls
opposite
women
sex.
strange. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was super fun. I mean, that's what you do as an actor, is you want to be able to play things that aren't you, not to hide within it, but to be able to explore it. Because if Neil as Neil goes out and is overtly sexual and flirty towards women at 25, I would feel really fraudulent and stupid, right? But when I get to do that and get paid for it, it's awesome.
So you mentioned there were a couple of years in between the shows where you did theater, and I guess one of the shows that you did was Rent.
Yep.
In Los Angeles.
Yep.
Yep.
Love it. Rent was a very pivotal chapter in my world because, as I said, well, as I probably alluded to, the boxes I had put myself in, having been in a relatively public medium at a young age and having learned to stand still very well, sort of precluded me from being able to explore different alternatives as to how to be. I couldn't just decide to go goth for a month. I could, but I don't know why. I felt like that would be weird, so I felt a little robotic. And then I went to theater to try and loosen it up, and then I saw Rent, the notions of Rent, the notions that Jonathan Larson conveyed, and the songs that he wrote, and the characters that he created, and this tribe of gypsy people from every demographic and every ethnicity and every age and every thing, all coming together to embrace the present and through their differences find a common bond and to explore and to through tragedy to celebrate what's good, and in a rebellious way really responded to me, and not only to me but a lot of people that sat outside and watched that show 75 times. And so I was super lucky to just have experienced that.
You
I feel
described the experience as liberating.
oh, fuck yeah, that was crazy. I mean, it was just crazy because the more you were, the better it was. And you can't say that with most jobs.
Mm-hmm.
With most jobs, if you're too in it and too, I don't know, like, it felt like I was on ecstasy for real in that world. Like, it didn't matter. Whoever you chose to want to make out with was so okay. And whoever was telling you a story about someone that had died in their arms was like, it was a safe space for that. Like, there was something about the ether in that world that was just amazing. And then every night you got to go out there and sing to people who were crying in front of you about, forget regret or life is yours to miss and no day but today. Like, those kind of things to do in your 20s was I was very fortunate to have gotten to be a part of that.
Your Broadway career has included Sweeney Todd, Cabaret, Assassins, and most recently, Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Thank you.
Which was a truly remarkable performance.
Thank you.
Tony Award-winning performance. And you really put yourself into that role, that you really obviously took it very seriously. And I love some of the conversation about how, every day you were, for those of you that saw it, you knew that Neil was going to the audience and picking somebody to swap bodily fluids with. And also some of your performances included being part of the stage itself and doing certain things on the stage.
I face humped a couple people a night. I licked the stage.
Yep.
I don't know, I wanted Hedwig to be nasty. I thought
the night that my wife and I saw it, and you do this where you go into the audience and pick somebody out, you were really tough on that woman.
Was I?
Yeah.
Why?
It was great.
Why? What did I do?
Because she was really annoying. And I think, and you picked up on that. And
What, someone that was late, like a latecomer?
no, she. I think she'd seen it like 10 times.
Oh, really?
And this was maybe her 11th time. And you were kind of rough on her. But it was great. It was great theater.
Hedwig was so fun because it was just, I was very happy to be able to have done it. I don't know. That show, John Cameron Mitchell did it originally at the Jane Street Theater 10, 12 years back, more, 1999. So, and it was so off Broadway, and I saw it, and it was nothing I thought, oh, if I could only do that someday. I thought, that's crazy. It was awesome, but it was singular to John. And then when it comes around full circle, and I'm finishing How I Met Your Mother, and David Binder, who produced the show, reached out and said, would you be interested in doing it on Broadway? It seemed like such an awful idea, and yet in the greatest way. I was initially nervous about the middle American idea of if they wanted to play into pictures of me in a dress on sides of buses to sell tickets, like that seemed kind of hoary, and I didn't think that was, wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. But no, it was John, he was there the whole time. Stephen Trask was there the whole time. And so I got to do this show that's a very small show in a much bigger space to an audience that is very, very diverse. And so it challenged the audience because they paid a lot of money sometimes for those tickets, and for a while the show had gotten good press, and so I think some people had been told that was the show they were just supposed to go see, and they didn't quite know why, but they had spent $500 a ticket to see it because there was only 2 weeks left, and so they were sitting there with a stage of like a broken up, beat up car and a rock band, that's it. And they were still moved at the end of the show. It's a beautiful piece. And I had been 9 years playing alpha male, like horn dog dude that was constantly, being the life of the fraternity party in his mind. And so to have to, while I was doing that, rehearse this other being, another a proper femininity, something that for most of my adolescence and early adulthood was trying to suppress a little bit, right? Because I wanted to act, and I wanted to act in cool parts. I wanted to be, you know, thought of for Spider-Man. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to be seen as overtly feminine during that period. And I'm not a really overtly feminine person. So I thought, how interesting to try and be feminine, but not only just be feminine like drag, but trans is a whole different thing. And Hedwig's process of changing from man to woman happened when he was a teenager. So you have to be past that. Like, you have to be past it. I have to have been over the insecurity of being like super girly before I performed it in front of an audience. So that challenge I found very interesting. And then the Iggy Pop-ness of it all, the idea when I was watching old Iggy Pop videos of him live, totally messed up, admittedly so, on heroin, and then some speed to pick him back up, and stumbling and people picking him up, and him singing and being crazy, and it was so raw, and you were stunned by it, and yet you couldn't stop watching it. I loved the idea that Broadway, in some sense, for a short period of time, could potentially be that. So when you speak of the woman that I was mean to, that was...
No, I didn't use the word mean. I said...
No, I used the word mean.
Right.
Hedwig was mean. Like, if she was nice and told a joke and it landed, and she followed it up with a punchline that landed again, she'd be more successful. She's not supposed to be successful. So that was an interesting idea, too. I would improvise with people.
I was just going to ask, how much did you play off the audience every night?
There were a few moments within. I would refer to someone up in the booth, and regardless of, I just play with them for a while. But if I didn't like the audience, I could channel that through Hedwig, and she'd get nastier. But she was very sexual and made out with people, and I kind of wanted that idea of Marilyn Manson style, or no, Trent Reznor better, where he would stand there with his mouth open, and people would spit at him and try and spit in his mouth, and he would just go like that, and just spit in his mouth. I thought that was so nasty and hot. I don't mean that I tried to accomplish that task, but I mean,
understand.
The idea of that was informing me as Hedwig, and it was super fun to do. Darren Criss is doing it. It's still open on the big Broadway, and there's an exciting person following him. So I love that it keeps on going. That was a super fun time.
Well, we'll get to some of these questions, and there's more to talk about your obsession and your fascination with magic.
I love magic.
Yep. You really do love magic. My wife and I have been to Neil and David's home, and there are so many surprises that relate back to magic.
Yeah.
The secret doors to your office and the photo booths, and it really is so fascinating. But when you think of your history, magic has played an important part in your life.
Yeah, it most certainly has. There was a magic shop in Albuquerque, so when we'd drive up the 3.5 hours from Ruidoso to Albuquerque, I'd go to a store called Fool's Paradise. There was a magic shop, and I would save my allowance and stand at magic shops are the best, because there's these glass counters where you can see displayed every trick, and it looks amazing. Brass tubes and red sponge balls and fake flowers and decks of cards, and there's a trick, and you can say, "Can I see that?" And they would bring it out and show you a trick and blow your mind hole right in front of you, and then you couldn't learn how it was done unless you gave him money. It was like childhood opium. And so I would save up my money, and sometimes I would buy 6 little tricks, and sometimes I would save up and buy 1 big trick, and then on the car ride home, I would just sit in the back seat and get to know how it was all done. And I think an element of illusion is important as an actor. I think that the ideas of misdirection as a skill is very helpful, more as a director, to be honest, than as an actor. But I think all of those are super fun. And I think people like to be fooled if they know that it's under the guise of entertainment.
Are you still on the board of directors of the Magic Castle?
I was the president of the Magic Castle. The Academy of Magical Arts is the organization.
My bad.
Housed at the Magic Castle. I'm not, because I moved to New York. So Erica Larson, whose father, Bill Larson, built the place and started it, is the current president. Great place, private club, so you can't get in. Great place.
And maybe it's a natural...
It's a private club, it's amazing. There's restaurants, you can't go. You're gonna love it.
They're New Yorkers, they're used to that. Maybe it's a natural evolution, but magic leads to your fascination with Halloween. You're a big Halloween
Love Halloween,
fan.
yeah, for sure. Well, that's from Ruidoso in small town. I think small town anywhere is, Halloween's a big thing. I'm still learning New York. It's one of the reasons I'm sucking up to you so much as a friend. Because New York's so different. Like, there's not one high school and one elementary school.
No. There's only one nursery school, the 92nd Street Y.
Nice. No, but this is like, and you have to go to Trinity. I'm like, what does that even mean? There's more than one school?
You're going to
So
find,
anyway.
with 2 kids, you're going to find all this
Well,
out.
no, I know this is my point.
Welcome to New York schools.
I went to Halloween for the first time in New York, and we went to a big, giant 40-story building where you looked in the elevator on a list of what apartments had treats, and you'd go up to the 11th floor, and you'd open up the door, and they're like dogs. There'd be dog bowls filled with Snickers. Look, Gideon. Oh, my God. This is fantastic. Great. Look over there. Oh, my God. Ding, 14th floor. Look, there's a bowl of candy over there. It was so not right. I didn't like it. So yes, I love Halloween. I love haunted houses. I love the whole notion of getting dressed up to have fun.
So in doing my research, I came across a fact that I know you're going to find very surprising. The audience will too. I read that you're gay.
How dare you, sir?
And it's an important part of who you are, because you were very bold, you were very deliberate, you were very forthright, and you came out at a fairly young age and made a very public statement about your preferences. And you weren't worried about the risk of being an actor and having your life's emotions played out, and that would cause you to lose jobs.
Sort of, yeah. I wasn't very young. It was about a third of the way through How I Met Your Mother season, so I was in my mid-late 20s, which I think is oldish now, and I think I was comfortably surrounded by a job that I knew would protect me on a mainstream sort of scale. I probably wouldn't have made said declaration if I hadn't have been working, but I probably would not have been asked to make any kind of declaration had I not been on a big show where there was scrutiny to ask and have interest in my personal life. So while I appreciate the circumstances that that led me to make a statement that allowed me to be who I am wherever I want to be, I'm most impressed by people who make those kind of statements and make those kind of choices because they feel like they just want to. And that's happening at a much younger age. And that's natural, that's human nature. It's part of being in a social media world.
Are there people that sadly are worried about not getting a job and aren't as public as you were able to be about who they want to be within their lives? And they're worried that they're not going to get a film
Sure.
because they
Sure,
need,
but I
they
don't
need
think-
to appeal to females, and men need to be able to relate to.
Well, yes, unique to actors, certainly, but I don't think it's unique to actors. I think your sexuality is something that you have to figure out, and it's not one or the other. It's a very interesting vaguity, and the only way to figure out if you're gay is to make out or fool around with someone of the same sex, and that's a very jarring conceit, because to a lot of people, if you do that one time, you're gay, and your family disowns you, right? And so it's hard for anyone, as an actor for sure, because I wanted to be able to play all kinds of different roles as a guy, and so I was worried about the negative. I keep saying feminine like it's a bad verb, which it's not, but just as a male being thought of as homosexual, therefore overtly feminine, even if you didn't behave that way necessarily, was a stigma that concerned me. And that's unique to actors, but I don't think it's any different than if you worked at a grocery store or if you were in a fraternity. You want to advance yourself in what you're doing, and you want people to accept you as much as they can, and we live in a historically puritanical society where rules are set as to how you're supposed to be. So if you defer from that, people are going to think you're different, and if you're different, you may not get the promotion. And all those things go through your head, not only business and salary-wise, but friendship-wise and family-wise. And some people have parents that are very strong in their opinions about that and don't have options. I got to come out with personal wealth and with a guy that I was dating, and so all of that, it was great. But some people come out in a very brave way with then a family that doesn't want them in the same house, and they have no job opportunity, you know what I mean? But I think in our world now, we live in a fantastic place where through social media and regular media, I guess, because there's so many examples on television and in movies of same-sex coupling or people of all different types that are treated like normal people, regular citizens, that through those examples, those that are super myopic in their views about where a guy is supposed to put his wiener, if those people see examples of Modern Family, of Ellen DeGeneres, she doesn't have a wiener, but you know what I'm saying,
It's a good term to use in a Jewish institution.
wiener. But when you see those examples, it softens the intensity of it. And then through social media, you're able to find like-minded people and support systems that are able to provide a backbone. But all I can say is, at the end of the day, I've never felt more secure being able to just be who I am. And that's an easy thing to say in New York City, because it's a magnificent town filled with all kinds of people that are supportive. And if they're not supportive, no one gives a shit. Like, you just go, there's so many people that it goes different. You know what I mean? It's.
But my sense is, because of your candor and your honesty, you have helped a lot of people get to a point in their life where they can make the same declaration that you made.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe, I don't know.
Which is a good thing. So we all know that you're married, and you're married to David,
David Michael Burtka.
David Michael Burtka. And when you first met him, you actually thought that he was straight, that he was dating your friend Kate.
I did. My friend Kate Reinders was they were both in Gypsy, the Bernadette Peters version of Gypsy that Sam Mendes directed, and I was doing cabaret on the big Broadway. I was MC number 408. And so I had met Kate in LA for Into the Woods. They were in that show, and I saw her on the street on 8th Avenue. We're walking by. Oh, hey, Kate, hey. And she's with this hot dude. And I say, hey, I'm Neil. And he's like, what's up? All James Dean-like. And so I said, nice job, Kate. And she said, oh, David? No, he's totally gay.
But he was dating somebody at the time.
He was, and so like a vulture, I circled, waiting for my chance.
But you were...
And Kate would call me, David's gonna be at this bar after the show. And then David and then would show up, and I'd just be at the bar. Oh, hey, well, what fancy seeing you here?
What a coincidence.
Would you like a bubbling shot of alcohol you know nothing about?
But you were really...
I roofied him a lot.
You were smitten. I mean, you were
Yeah, I was.
head over heels.
Yeah, he's a dreamboat.
You absolutely. No, I can understand.
No, I like David a lot. I fancy people that dance well. Because you can see where my hang-ups were when I was younger with the whole standing still thing. And I never really took dance classes. So all those So You Think You Can dancers or the amazing ensemble people, even when I was younger, the people that would dance in the Six Flags theme park shows, and they'd do like kick splits. Kick splits. So David was just super handsome and Harrison Fordy kind of way, and he danced unbelievably and sang well, and I just had a real talent crush on him. And then we started dating once he broke up with his ex, and then we were both in furnished sublets paying too much money in other people's towels. And so we thought, why don't we just get a place together? So we rented a place together, went to LA, got a Penske truck, and we filled it up with stuff from LA that was mine, and we went across the country, stopping in Albuquerque and getting stuff from my parents' house, and going all the way to Michigan, and going all the way through stopping at antique stores and weird places, and we ended up in New York with a house and a life, and we unpacked it, and that was like 9 or 10 years ago.
And now in that life, you have Gideon and Harper.
Twin kids, yeah.
And that was not an easy process for you, going through...
We tried and tried and tried.
Did you enjoy trying?
So much.
Did you enjoy trying? Yeah.
Sometimes we didn't even enjoy it.
Right. But you knew that he had his time of the month and you had to, yeah.
He'd stand on his head.
Right. But something
spin
must
in a
have worked.
circle.
Once again, there are some references in this book that I will not go into.
No, David's mother passed away from leukemia very suddenly in 21 days about 7 years ago now. Wow. And she was a wonderful person, and she was super healthy otherwise and filled with life. And his parents, like mine, were both married and had only been married to each other. We both have one sibling. He has a 3-year older sister. I have a 3-year older brother. We're both Geminis, so we have a lot in common.
You share clothes. You're the same.
We're the same size.
You're the
so
same
we
size.
Share a wardrobe, which is awesome. But Debbie's passing through the element of immediacy into our lives, because when you're actor people, jobs kind of come your way. You finish a job, and no matter what you were doing, as great as it was, you're just right back in the mix with everybody else looking for the next job. And then you audition for a job, and you don't get it, and that happens until you get another job. It's like the monkey bars, you know? And then you're just kind of swinging around, waiting for something else. And there's something about that life that, although fun and fulfilling, just something was lacking. It just felt like we were waiting for someone else to tell us when our next opportunity can be. And that was okay. That happens a lot. It's not a bad thing. But then his mother passed away, and we suddenly thought, wow, we should make big decisions now, because tomorrow, John Nash comes to New York, and he and his wife are in a taxi, and the taxi slides and smashes into a medium, and they're both dead. Like, they didn't wear their seatbelt. I don't wear my seatbelt in a taxi.
I bet you will now.
Yeah, I do. But I'm saying that kind of immediacy, that your mom calls and says, there's this spot on my leg, and I went to have it checked out, and the doctor checked it out, and now I'm in the hospital, and you have to come visit. And then 8-9 days later, she's in the chemo, but she's got pneumonia, and then she's intubated, and 15 days later, you're there, and she's not talking, and then 19 days later, she's on a respirator, and 20 days later, they tell you that the brain functions is just going to continue to deteriorate, and 21 days later, you're opting her out. And that immediacy just kind of made us think, we need to make big moves now in life. And we weren't young, so we wanted to have kids, so we started the process. I do go on. We started the process of surrogacy through a company called Growing Generations, which is a really well-known in that world organization that makes sure that you're paired with the right people, an egg donor who was anonymous and who they vetted very well, and then a surrogate who's another woman not anonymous that we had a relationship with, and make sure that the legal ramifications of two same-sex parents are allowed in the state, and go through all of those things. So we did all of those things.
And you got married.
And we got married after that, and we implanted 2 sperm, one of David's, one of mine, 2 eggs, same lady, into the lady oven, and that's her name, her real name, birth certificate, Lady Oven Smith. And then they both took, and when we have twins, one of his and one of mine. It worked out so great. And one's a boy and one's a girl, and they're super healthy and they're hilarious, and we're done. We're done. It's never happened.
David is daddy. And
I'm Papa.
You're Papa.
Yeah.
And I've seen you all together, and it's a pretty special thing.
Kids are special, man. They're crazy.
Yeah, they are, indeed.
They're crazy because you're having to be put in a constant position of trying to shape them without overtly shaping them, and yet at this age you have to just constantly discipline them or reprimand them because all they know is boundary pushing. So I just worry right now. That's my worry. They're good with complex thought a little bit at 4. They saw all 3 Star Wars movies, so they can talk about Jedis.
To get ready for the next Star Wars movie.
Yeah. And so talking to them is fun, but I'm just constantly talking at them, I feel. And they're my first kids, so I don't know any other way.
You guys are...
I threw the taser away, so that's a good thing. But
it's illegal in New York anyway.
Good.
To taser your kids.
Good. But they're fantastic. They're very independent, and they're very active, and
very
they make
sweet.
me laugh and laugh and laugh.
In the few minutes left, let's ask some questions that the audience members came up with, and this is a nice connection. What will be the most important advice that you will give to your children?
The thing I'm stuck on now is something that Pam Fryman, who's the director of How I Met Your Mother, she's an extraordinary woman. She directed every episode sans 4 of the 240 episodes that we did. And she has twin girls who are amazing, Megan and Katie. And they're best of friends, and I was constantly impressed with how they were friends as well as parents, and the kids were so well behaved. She gave me the advice that they just throughout their upbringing want them to do their best. That at base they just do their best, and you can challenge them on, is what you're doing the best that you can do? Which is not wrought with shame and you can do better or whatever, but if they think they did their best, I don't really care what they do as long as they're drawn to it and they've thought it through and they're doing the best that they can.
Who inspires you in your personal and professional life?
I would say Pam Fryman inspires me a lot. She's a really wonderful person and a really fantastic director. Director's a hard gig because everyone looks to you for motivation and direction, and you have to represent yourself professionally and in a hard way, but in a super soft way. And everyone that works for Pam never wants to work with anyone else because she's awesome and loving and kind and listens and is generous. Professionally, I loved Jim Henson, and I loved David Fincher. I kind of have a boner for David Fincher these days.
And I read that
Not a real, like a actor boner.
Walt Disney.
Yeah, I say if I like Walt Disney too much, then I sort of feel like I have to defend him, because he wasn't
perfect.
He wasn't perfect, right? But what I do admire about him is his tenacity and his desire to create these experiences that people seek out for the sole experience of enjoyment with their family. and Disneyland was a place I went to a lot when we were growing up once a year. And just the dedication to detail and the cost spent and the number of times that he tried to get money from banks to fund it, and the amount of times he got refused, and that he still was committed to that. And then when you see it now, and you still ride Pirates of the Caribbean, and you can still see the thumbprint of what he did, that it's smart and it's childish and it's magnificent. I love that. And Jim Henson in a similar way, you know. He would take inanimate objects and create life in them that made children want to learn the alphabet. And I think that's amazing.
Well, you say that two of the tenets in life that you really admire are creativity and authenticity.
Authenticity, yeah.
Did they?
I went to a thing called the Forum. Oh, that was a weird reaction. The Forum's like a group self-help kind of thing, and there's a Landmark Education does it. And through that, you kind of get rid of some of the baggage that you have maintained in your past. And I haven't been with it for a long, long time, but I did the introduction course and then the advanced course. And through that, they kind of distill who you are into two words. And those were the words that stuck out to me most. Because I really like that. I really think creativity is important. Whatever you do, I think it's fun to be creative with meals that you cook or meals that you eat or vacations that you go on or dates that you set. You know, I just think it's fun to be creative. Everyone likes that. And I think authenticity is just super important. I might be hyper aware of it because I grew up in an industry that's wrought with inauthenticity, that people will look you right in the face and totally tell you what you need to hear at the moment. I don't think that's unique to that industry, but it's filled with it there. So I think transparency and authenticity is just super important. I don't mind having conflict with someone if we can then be done with it. It's that years spent where you know that something's going on and you're not talking about it, those awful Thanksgivings with the family of cousins. Where you're like, hey, Jim. Hey, Neil. I hate that. Life's too short for that stuff. So, yeah.
You can come to our house for Thanksgiving.
Yeah? You can have a bowl of candy out in the front.
Left over from Halloween.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple inside baseball questions on
Okay.
Barney and How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
If you could go to McLaren's right now, what drink would you order?
Oh, I'd order a rye Manhattan. No, I'd order a rye old fashioned with a little cherry bitters as well. I love an old fashioned right now. David got me mixology lessons for Christmas. And so I'm just drunk all day. No, but I had a whole day of whiskey, so I learned about that, and a whole day of gin, and then a whole day of tequila, and then a whole day, I blacked out by the fourth day. But it was delicious. So yeah, I'm big into the mixology drinks. I like Barney, I like the Dean Martin-ness of Barney, that he always had a glass of something with some cubes in it. He used it as like a prop.
Dean
Really
Martin,
good for
Dean Martin also had a cigarette.
Yeah, you can't smoke on CBS. But watch how many times Barney says a line and then he'll say the punchline and then you can drink in the silence. That was always fun to do.
Have you met Ted?
I have.
People are really worried about Barney. Here's a question.
Oh, man.
In the end of How I Met Your Mother,
Oh, yeah.
does Barney Stinson die alone?
Well, I have a proper answer for that, but who asked the question? Who wrote that?
Who will take credit for asking the
I have
question?
I'm not trying to call you out, but do you mean in my opinion at the end of it all, or do you mean at the end of the show? At the end of it all, does Barney Stinson die alone? No, because he spoiler alert, had a
Show's over, Neil.
he had a kid. He had a kid, and so I sort of feel that he probably lives vicariously through his daughter, and probably treats her like a queen. So I can only imagine, unless they had some sort of awful breakup, that he probably died of overconsumption, which means it would have been early-ish. But no, I was a big fan of the ending of that show, and a lot of people weren't, and it annoyed me.
So
one of the things I think is the best thing about Carter Bays and Craig Thomas and the way they wrote that show is that they always filled it with pathos. And people liked the show because Ted felt and believed in love and this desire to have this amazing love for someone. And they had a plan for it, right? And Barney in its conceit, in its structure, was the devil on the shoulder, was the always single, can't stop, banging, strange guy. Like, that's in his DNA, like that he was just that way. And even the 9th season was in the entirety of the wedding of he and Robin. And throughout it, they kept saying how they weren't supposed to be together. Seasons passed, they broke up. Like, they were not meant to be together. And I think in a happy ending world, people just wanted them to end up together. And I like that they didn't, because it seems more honest. I feel like as the seasons go by of that show, the writing gets more adult and the situations get more realistic, even though they're ridiculous, right? Because it's a sitcom. But now when you see how it ends and you go back and you watch the show a second time and you see the purpose of the story that Ted's telling his kids, I think it changes the way you watch those early episodes. And I'm very impressed with how Carter and Craig thought that through 200 plus episodes later.
one more from the audience. What was the biggest challenge in your career, and how did you get through it? P.S. I love you. That was from the card member. I mean, I do love you.
Thank you.
But that was...
Biggest challenge? I don't really, God, I don't know. I've worked a lot. I thought the Oscars was super duper hard through circumstance. Well, not circumstance. That makes it sound like I'm passing the buck. I thought the Oscars were really hard by design. Mm-hmm. I think Hedwig was super hard physically and grueling. I think the time spent when I wasn't working and I was waiting for the job of my past to allow me a job for the future was trying. But knowing that I was going to be doing the Oscars and the amount of time and energy spent on every second of that, because of so many people watch it and everyone has an opinion, and I take full ownership for all of it. But it's also an innately difficult show these days. It's different from how it used to be, because the Oscars is the 12th award show that the actors are going to for the same roles. So by the time the Oscars come out, these people have done this gauntlet with these people with different dresses and lost to someone else 11 times before. And they're still nominated, and it's great to be nominated.
Right.
But they know that Julianne Moore is going to win. And so they still have to get all dolled up, and they still have to talk about how grateful they are. They've already filmed another movie that they're ready to talk about. They're already in production for another movie that they're currently talking about, but they have to spend all their focus on these movies. Then they get there, they're starving, they're nervous.
And there's no alcohol involved.
Yeah, that doesn't
As opposed to the Globes.
And then you have to do this show where a gajillion people watch it, and if you're too blue, then you're offensive and you're not respectful. And if you're too respectful, then you're not being clever enough. And so you're trying to figure out where that voice is. You know, do you do just straight intros? Do you do a joke intro? Do you do a bit and then an intro? You're running long. Someone talked too much, so now cut the bit and just do. There's like so much that goes on behind it. And yet when you're home watching it, which I do every year, I just talk about how crappy it is. I mean, that's the nature of the Oscars. Really? That's the best you could come up with? Bleh. Whoa. Who chose that dress? Bleh. And so I knew that was going to happen, and yet you want to do it because it's super fun, and you make big decisions and hope that runners work, and if they don't, that it is what it is. at the end of the day, it's just an award show. So I sort of knew that it didn't mean that much, because I could probably ask any of you to name 5 winners of this last Oscar, and you'd be hard-pressed to name 5. And it was a weird, whatever. That's a hard one.
But you look really good with your shirt off.
P.S. I love you. I thought, see,
So well,
that whole thing with the underwear was its own whole thing. Because there was an obvious bit to Birdman, which was a movie that had come out, and we were exactly ripping that. And Michael Keaton, for a hot minute, was going to be a part of that, and I was going to be walking down the corridor and pass Michael Keaton, both of us in our underwear. Hey, nice stuff. Yeah, you too. And we keep walking. And then that didn't happen, and we kept it up. But the problem was, a lot of the people who saw the Oscars this year didn't see the movies that we were talking about.
Yep.
So to a lot of people, my coming out in my underwear seemed utterly gratuitous and nonsense, right? And that was the photo that was used a lot. And so I don't regret it, but we spent a lot of time on the opening number of that show. And I thought it was fantastic. It was shadow work, and it was honoring the cinema and a musical number that wasn't a lot of dancers in formation, because we didn't want to be like the Tonys, but it needed to be a big opening number, and Jack Black was in it, and I don't know, there were a lot of elements to that I was really proud of. And then there's just a picture of me in showing my junk. Thanks.
So,
by it, I hope you mean my penis. See, I go back to the underwear.
Right.
I can't help it.
You've done the Emmys, you've done the Oscars, you've done the Tonys. Are you going to get an EGOT and do the Grammys? Be an EGOT host and kick LL Cool J out of the Grammys?
He'd love that.
Or go on lip sync and...
Yeah, sure, that would be a fun feather in the cap, but I don't think about it like I need to accomplish it. Award shows are hosted by people who are on the specific networks that the awards are from. And LL Cool J is a massive success and a big part of CBS. And so I think he will and should, as a star in the music industry, continue to do that. But that would be super fun.
So up next for Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes.
This fall, you are bringing back the variety show on NBC.
In a way, yeah. Yeah, it's called Best Time Ever with Neil Patrick Harris. And it's based on a UK show called Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway, which is in its 12th series. They just won another BAFTA award for it. Great guys. It's a really interesting show, and I hope that it's live every Tuesday night after 10 o'clock, I think. And I think it's just super fun. When I was asked about it and watched the UK version of the show, I started kind of like, oh, this is going to be dumb. Why would I do this? And then as I finished watching it, my face hurt from smiling so much. It's super random, lots of different segments. There's a thing called Sing Along Live, where we'll have a famous person come out and sing a song that'll be awesome, like Dolly Parton or Neil Diamond or someone amazing. And the crowd's there, there's 300 or so people. And then throughout the song, people in the audience and at home are part of the show, and they don't really realize it. So throughout the song, Neil Diamond will just stop, and then we'll cut to someone in their living room, and they won't know that their friend had set them up, that Skype is there, that there's a segment producer there. So then they'll be like, wait, what? And if they can finish the lyric, they'll win $1,000. And then he'll keep singing, and then we'll have someone else do it. There's a thing called Win the Ads, or at the end of the show, where someone legitimately, randomly is chosen from the entire audience, and they come up, and if they answer trivia questions in the right order and correctly, there's caveats, then they win all of the ads that were advertised during the show. So every week someone will win, theoretically, a car and a house and a mortgage and a kitchen and a boat.
Does that include Cialis?
Cialis, dog food, diapers. which is great, and I think great because it's transparent. It's a big network variety show on NBC, and at the same time, there's lots of ads, and that's all part of it. But this is not a show where you watch the ads, you win them. And so that's part of it. There's hidden camera stuff. We're right now following people who are going to be guests of the show, and they don't know it. And so friends of theirs have reached out to us and have planned stuff. So there's a whole team of ours that Secret Service style are tracking and following people, and they will be pulled out by me up onto the stage and will reveal that for the past month or two, we've been in their house doing random things to them. There's a little NPH that's on the show. I'll have a sidekick. There'll be a thing called the End of the Show. Every show ends with a big, giant live production number by someone awesome, a Cirque du Soleil or a Blue Man Group or something, and I'll get to play and be a part of that. It's just great fun. Guest announcer, there'll be a guest star that's the announcer every week.
When will it start?
It's all kinds of nonsense.
When will
I can't
it
wait. September 15th is the first one after the finale of America's Got Talent. And it's, I highly recommend watching it, not only because I'm doing it, but I'm rarely excited, like authentically excited about something. It hasn't been done before, and it's not variety like you would expect. It's not sketches that could potentially fail. Failure is imminent, because it's live, but it'll be just super fun, and if you go, you'll probably get to be a part of it. It's a really fun time.
Well, Neil,
it'll be the best time ever.
You have been incredibly candid with us, and I think everybody here appreciates knowing you a little bit more.
Thank you.
Don't touch those cards. Because we have to end soon, but I do want to end.
I want to see what they were, though.
Yeah, he wants to ask himself a question.
There will be a sequel to Dr. Horrible someday.
I'm going to get poignant for a moment.
I love Kehinde Wiley. He's a great artist. Sorry.
We've got 3 minutes to go.
Cripes.
8:57. We're going to be out of here by 9.
Okay.
There are children in the audience. They have homework. So
I've been cursing.
Really, I hadn't noticed. Neil Patrick Harris, Choose Your Own Autobiography. It's a very unique book about Neil and a lot of things that we talked about. But you end it with sort of a vision of a show or a movie that you are in with your loved ones. And the script starts, you started out your story as a child in Ruidoso. You hoped for fame and glory through your odds at best were so-so. Down life's long path you went, your route unexplained, your travel stressful. You chose your own adventure, and your choices were successful. To cut ahead a little bit, you now have David join you on stage, and now there you are.
The book ends with a musical number.
Well, right. I thought I set it up.
And it's you. You're the protagonist.
And now there you are with the family you started, and Gideon Harper join you on stage, the 4 of you in a gorgeous tableau. You'll share a new adventure for now, still uncharted. You've spun out a tale, and the tale is still spinning. You're really happy, your real happy ending, and it's only the beginning. And then you go back to the pipe that you mentioned with the powder in it, and there is the young you that says, "Have fun, Neil." And now the now you says, "I already have powder," and then you disappear from the stage. We can't you're good at magic, but you can't make us really disappear.
Or can I?
Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Patrick Harris.